Hello and welcome to the Strong Suit Podcast, where we focus on the people part of your business. Every Tuesday and Thursday, I interview a world-class expert on talent and recruiting so that you can build a company filled with rock stars. And I can tell you that you are not going to build a rock star company unless you've got happy, profitable employees. It's just impossible. Just no two ways about it. And that's specifically important around employee retention. If you have a prayer of keeping your people, especially your best people, when we're at 3.7% unemployment, the only way to do that is by helping your people advance their career. Now, that may seem like conflicting goals, right? How do you help them advance their career, which may involve leaving your organization? But there's just no other way around it. So it's important to understand how your people are thinking about their career, what's important to them, and what they expect from you, their manager and leader. So I wanted to find an expert on this topic, and I found one. Her name is Marty Constant, and she's the leader of Constant Change. And so for years, over a decade, she's been thinking about this specific topic. And what she's defined it is agile careers. How do you, instead of, the old days where you would plan out your career for 5, 10, 20, 30 years, how do you be responsive? How do you iterate a career, much like a agile software developer does with his or her code? And so, Marty, it's a joy to welcome you to the show.
I'm so happy to be here, Jeff. Thank you for having me. And thank you for invoking the happy, profitable employees, which is a project that I've been working on most recently from the perspective of the employer, as well as from the perspective of the individual.
So maybe that's a great place to start. I get the profitable employees. I think we all know what that is. What the heck is a happy employee? People do surveys and they talk to their people. And I think they're looking for this answer of, how do I know if my people are happy? How do I make them happy? Can I even make them happy?
Right. So people won't stay with an organization unless they have some degree of happiness. The worst thing that a company wants to have is somebody that is deliberately sabotaging the organization because of their unhappiness or because of unfair treatment. All of these things contribute to unhappiness in the workplace.
Got it. So you've studied this for a long time. What's been one of the biggest surprises as you've researched this, as you've interviewed managers and employers, employees? What's the biggest misconception?
I think one of the biggest misconceptions is around this whole thing of what makes an organization successful is employees that feel empowered to do what they do best, which is optimizing their time and their talents. And I think it's this misunderstanding at times between individuals and organizations of how are they feeling of the corporation, the organization, how are they feeling about my development? I care about the organization, but first and foremost, I care about what I'm going to learn and how am I going to grow in this position. And I think that's one of the biggest challenges and the biggest opportunities that any organization has today.
And there's an inherent conflict, because once one of my people becomes proficient in their role, they're killing it, they're doing great, the last thing I want to do is move them or see them advance or move because, I kind of want you right where you are. And so it sets up this conflict. How do managers and leaders begin to manage that conflict of finding what works for the company, but also finding what works for the individual?
I like to cite a couple people here that I think do a great job at this and have done a great job at this. Reid Hoffman, in developing his organization when he was more hands-on, really felt with the development and the growth of LinkedIn that it was necessary to kind of have an up or out mentality, meaning that if you're not growing, you're dying. And he felt that 2 to 3 year tours of duty were really excellent for building an organization, not only for the individual, but the innovation that people would bring to their roles because of their higher levels of engagement and curiosity. So that's number one. And number two is a show, it's actually a TV show that I watch called Madam Secretary. And
yeah, it's a great show.
It's a great show. And just recently, the Secretary of State, Madam Secretary, said to her assistant, she gave him a timeline. I might have been 2 years, might have been 3 years, and just said, you really need to put your fire date in the calendar, and I expect you to grow. Whether that means that you grow within the organization.
What did she mean by fire date?
Pardon?
What did she mean by fire date?
She meant that he would be fired within 3 years. Now, it wasn't like he was going to be brought into the office and fired,
right?
But she wanted him to have that date to continue figure out what is it that I'm going to do to help grow and help this organization called the White House.
Yeah, it takes the manager really negotiating almost with their best people to say, look, master this role, stay in this role, and I will ensure that there is another opportunity, a new growth path following that role, but you need to commit some amount of time. And I think there is a level of impatience, especially amongst top performers, amongst many millennials, where 2 to 3 years sounds like a lifetime these days in the pace, with the pace of change that we've got.
It sure does. The 2 to 3 years to some seems really quick. It never seemed quick to me.
Yeah.
It seemed about right for me as I was growing in business. But yeah, I interviewed, 1/3 of the people I interviewed out of 120 people were millennials. And there were a lot of them, I would say if I did the stats on it, it would probably be an 18-month figure.
Yeah.
And they were often—
18 months in terms of their expectations?
In terms of their expectations and what they wanted to do next. And they really, a lot of them wanted more responsibility. They wanted to be empowered to go to the next thing. And the other thing that they wanted was training. They wanted to be mentored. They didn't know originally that they wanted a mentor, but they figured out that they couldn't do it alone, and not having enough training was a huge problem. Leadership development. You can't do leadership development too soon with young people.
So how do you bridge that gap if the expectation is, I want to be moving in 18 months, but for the company perspective, it might be more like 2 to 3 years? How do you bridge that gap and manage expectations, not risk losing your best people because the headhunters are calling them every day?
Exactly. And this might be a provocative thought that I'm—
I like provocative. You're in the right place.
Yeah. So this is, I just facilitated a panel last week about this very topic. And one of the things that is really becoming a bit of a trend is people within organizations being coached. Coaching is an investment by an organization. High potentials are coached, especially when they're really moving fast and up through an organization. But this next layer is critically important. It is about mentorship and it is about coaching. The top tier business schools, as well as the next tier business schools, are making certain right now that their existing students are being coached by professional career coaches.
You're not referring to my manager coaching me. You're referring to outside, third-party, independent, make an investment in the person type of coaching.
Exactly. Making it available. I know there's all kinds of digital, techniques. Even I'm thinking of like the site, like the Muse. The Muse, has everything from connecting people with jobs, but they have job coaching, and a lot of people do that. I'm not saying that the corporations affiliate with Muse. Maybe they do, maybe they don't. But there are cost-effective solutions to letting particularly your high potential employees know that they're valued, and giving them access not just to the training, like their technical training or leadership training, but also giving them access to information about how they can think about their own value and how the organization can help to mesh that.
So in addition to keep the individual engaged and happy and profitable in their role for 2 to 3 years, in addition to giving them the training to ensure that they master the functional aspects of the role, you're talking about supplementing that with mastering leadership, managing others, etc., in which the individual continues to develop and build a broader set of skills to keep them engaged for the 2 to 3 years.
Right. And there's another example. I was working with an individual about 10 years ago, she was a high potential within a fast-growing global PR firm. Actually, it's an established global PR firm. And I would find, in chatting with her, I would find her getting really frustrated, like, I'm really bored, or they're not doing things right. We have too much turnover in the department. I have to work way too late. She was working in New York at the time. And she said, this is just broken. And I said to her, I said, well, what is it that you want?
Yeah.
Well, I wasn't really her coach, but I said, what is it that you want? She painted a picture for me what she really wanted. And I said, does that position currently exist? Well, no, it doesn't. And it was actually something in training. She was working in research and then in account development. And that role did not exist. And I said, well, my advice to you is to talk to 2 or 3 people within the organization that have clout, that respect you. She was given some sort of leadership training herself, so she was a high potential. And I said, give them your ideas and get some feedback from them about how to couch this with your own boss. And then actually be transparent with your own boss and say, these are my ideas. And she was able to, over a course of 10 years, use this methodology to iterate what it is that she was working on. She went from research to training to business development and world travel.
And I think the most important point there is that she took responsibility for her career aspirations and figuring it out. She didn't wait for her manager to do it for her. Who at the end of the day owns that responsibility? Is it the manager or their direct report that needs to figure out their career path and where they want to go?
Well, I'm going to be a bit biased here, and I believe in truly everyone has personal accountability for their own career. There's no way around it. We all like to think that there's going to be an advocate that will develop us and be there for us. When I was coming up, I didn't have that 10 to 15 year older mentor. So I created my own advisory board, if you will. I called it a feedback squad, but I created my own feedback squad so that I could get the advice that I needed. I was not going to wait if it wasn't provided to me. But
unfortunately, not every employee does that.
Right, not every employee does that, but they're capable.
Sure. And so the manager needs to express to them, look, I'm here to support you. I'll help you figure out where you want to get to, but you need to take ownership for your career and tell me what that is. And if you don't know, then I can present you with some options and choices, like you said, by meeting with others in the organization or even mentors outside the organization.
Right.
So at the end of the day, Marty, what do you mean by this concept of the agile career? When I think about agile software development, it's characterized by very short sprints, et cetera. How do you kind of think about it? And I don't mean the formal definition, but I guess what does an agile career look like versus a non-agile career or a traditional career path?
Agility starts with responding to the changes that are around you. So that's the obvious piece, that if there's technology changes going on around you, and this is from the perspective of the department, whether it's rolling out HR software or, HR technology solutions that are going to better engage with people or better manage and monitor the growth of an organization, those kinds of things are important, as well as the individual. So when I say career agility, there's 2 parts of it. It's the companies are responding to the industry changes and the technology changes. So they may be doing things like compressing the amount of people that are into a department because they're being more efficient. They don't need the amount. They might be hiring more freelancers on the outside that are specialists and maybe having more generalists. And I'm using an example here.
Yep.
So that would be one way of an organization being agile with economic trends, financial trends, and technology trends. And the same goes for the other side, that if the employee is aware that automation and artificial intelligence are impacting what it is that they do, it's important for them to know, well, how is this going to affect my industry and my role right now? And what kinds of ideas can I bring to my manager that will be an innovative idea that will help implement some of this? So they both play a part in this. So on the one level, corporations might be getting smaller depending on, how efficient they are. And as you said, 3.7% level of employment, that's a huge change.
Sure.
So how are we behaving differently now than we were 5 years ago? And so that's a huge change. So organizations have to adapt to that, and individuals are adapting to that. The individuals have a little bit more power now because they're able to move if things don't fit right for them.
And they won't hesitate to move. Right. So it's incumbent upon the manager to create options, create paths, even when constrained because you're not a large company. Even if you're a 10-person or 50-person, 100-person company. I know you mentioned earlier, Marty, some companies use an up or out philosophy. Sometimes there's just no up because of the pyramid or the inverted pyramid. There's just nowhere to go. So, but you still need to create, the manager still needs to create learning opportunities to engage people, whether it's switching them to a lateral move in a different function, special assignments, a special project, a challenge stretch assignment, outside mentors, whatever it is, you got to keep your people's learning and engagement up, even if you can't, quote unquote, promote them.
You mentioned a really, really important thing, the word project. So we're back to the question that you asked, what makes Agile different?
Yeah.
Agile really is, agility in software development really is breaking down your development initiative into a series of projects and creating sprints and developing them and then learning from them, making tweaks and getting to the next stage.
Yeah.
This is the same way of looking at a career. This particular individual I talked about at this global PR firm, she stayed at the firm for 10 years by iterating.
Yeah.
She viewed her career as a series of projects, and her managers wisely saw the value of it. And she actually, this same individual was coached internally by people within business development because they saw a spark in her that was really special. They saw it when she was doing training, and thought we could really use this. So they were investing in her. So she saw her career as a series of projects. And whether you work for an organization or whether you move to different organizations, if you view your career as a series of projects, two things will happen. You will be highly engaged because you view it as a project that has a beginning and a middle and an end. It's not this sustained doldrums.
It's a burst, whether it's weeks or months, right? It has a beginning, a middle, and an end. And I think people really respond to that, to your point, Marty, because there's a sense of accomplishment and fulfillment for all of us when we finish a quote unquote project. Mm-hmm. When you don't chunk it up that way and it's just a job that's kind of interminable with no beginning, middle, and end, when a headhunter calls, you're like, I'll talk to him because I don't see any light at the end of the tunnel. But when you think about it in terms of projects, I agree with you. It makes a big difference.
Right. So those are two of the main ways that I would answer that. And then the third way that I would answer that, and I think that this is a lesson for organizations all around, it's this cultivation of the personal brand and the employee brand and the corporate brand concurrently. Those, corporate brand is marketing. The employer brand is marketing and HR and culture and the organization wanting to attract the brightest and retain the brightest and the best, the employer branding. And then we have the personal branding. And I think in the past, I know when people were working on, I want to do a speaking engagement for the industry, the manager might say, well, I don't want that person out on the road. Maybe I can't afford for that person to be out on the road. But you know what? It's important for that person to be out on the road and to be presenting on your industry because they're going to carry your brand in a way that you never could. And guess what? They're going to come back energized and they're going to bring back innovative ideas into the department. And
the simple truth is you're going to lose them if you don't give them wings, right? It's much like raising a child. You need to give them wings to leave the nest. And they're going to leave the nest one day whether you like it or not. So the goal is to keep them as long as you can. But if you try to hold them too tight, you don't let them, kind of spread their wings and try new things, it's going to backfire. Marty, this is fascinating. How can people learn more about this concept, get their hands on the book, and get in touch with you?
Yeah, the name of the book is Activate Your Agile Career: How Responding to Change, will ignite your career. And the website is agilecareer.com. And you're going to see a whole lot more about the phrase happy, profitable employees.
I love that phrase.
Corporate perspective. Those are the speaking engagements that I'm involved in.
Great. I love that concept. Happy, profitable employees. They are not mutually exclusive, are they?
Yeah, no, right. Just if an individual is happy with what they're being paid, and then they're making profits and margins for the corporation, it's a big win all around.
Let's not overcomplicate these folks, right? Let's think about the time you invest to develop your people, advance them, even if it doesn't mean promote them, and they'll stay. Even if you can't afford to pay top dollar, can't afford to pay more than Google or Facebook, they will still stay because there are things that are more important to your people than just money.
Right, that's absolutely true. When someone we all remember it when we were in grade school or high school. If a teacher took an interest in us, we were golden.
Yeah.
Someone took an interest in us and saw something on us that we might not have seen. It's no different in a corporation.
That's right. That's right. Marty, thank you so much for making the time. Terrific.
Thanks, Jeff. It was really great chatting with you.